substantial American force into Somalia.
American troops hoping to safeguard the delivery of food and medicine to help turn this crisis around. Operation Restore Hope now underway.
I have seen with my own eyes dead American soldiers being dragged through the streets of Mogadishu. There were at least 2 U.S. helicopters confirmed shot down.
If this operation was a success, then the U.S. can't stand much more success in Somalia.
In the early 1990s, the Somali Civil War had reduced the nation to a failed state. Millions were on the verge of starving to death as famine racked the country.
In the months ahead, 1.5 million people could starve to death.
Warring factions agreed to a ceasefire so the UN could provide humanitarian relief and help restore order.
The UN has been prevented from deploying its initial commitment of troops.
Warlords, notably Mohammed Farah Aidid, ignored the ceasefire. UN peacekeepers came under attack.
Food convoys have been hijacked, aid workers assaulted.
A couple of hours ago, the first advanced units, the Special Forces, Navy SEALs, and CB units came ashore. They landed, of course. They were met by a gang of press.
And you guys really spoiled our nice little raid that we want to come in without anybody knowing it.
In December 1992, Operation Restore Hope began, with U.S. forces landing in Mogadishu to support and protect humanitarian efforts.
United States forces went ashore at approximately 4:30 a.m. Somali time.
A smooth beginning for Operation Restore Hope. What lays ahead in this land of warring factions is less certain.
Aidid, the most belligerent of the warlords, attacked U.S. troops. On August 8, 1993, 4 U.S. soldiers were killed by a command-detonated mine, raising the total number of U.S. troops killed in Operation Restore Hope to 12. In response, a special task force was deployed. Task Force Ranger included pilots from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, Navy SEALs, and members of the 75th Ranger Regiment, a Special Missions Unit, and the 24th Special Tactics Squadron. Their mission, named Operation Gothic Serpent, was to capture Aidid. Throughout August and September, Task Force Ranger conducted missions targeting Aidid and his lieutenants. On October 3, 1993, Task Force Ranger raided the Olympic Hotel, capturing 2 of Aidid's lieutenants and 22 other men, before the Somali National Alliance shot down 2 UH-60 Blackhawks. The sniper team, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randall Shugart, fought their way to the second crash site to provide security and aid to any surviving crew members. The operators fought against waves of militiamen until they were killed. Pilot Chief Warrant Officer 2, Michael Duran, the sole survivor of the crash, was taken prisoner. Over the course of 17 hours after the first Black Hawk being shot down, U.S. forces engaged in a fierce, chaotic firefight with the Somalis. Of the U.S. forces, 19 men were killed, and more than 70 were wounded. On the morning of October 4th, a rescue column of armored personnel carriers and attack helicopters fought through the city to extract the U.S. forces. Durant was released after negotiations between Aidid and U.S. Ambassador Robert Oakley. He'd been held captive for 11 days. The Battle of Mogadishu influenced President Bill Clinton to effectively end U.S. involvement in Somalia.
These tragic events raise hard questions about our effort in Somalia. All American troops will be out of Somalia no later than March the 31st.
The Battle of Mogadishu was one of the most brutal urban firefights that U.S. troops have been in since the Vietnam War. Gordon and Shugart received posthumous medals of honor. After the battle, 1 Air Force Cross and at least 3 dozen Silver Stars were awarded to soldiers involved. In 2021, the Army announced that 60 soldiers who fought in the battle would have their awards upgraded, 58 receiving Silver Stars and 2 receiving the Distinguished Flying.
Good evening, American patriots. You had many places you could be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very much. Tonight, we're starting off the program remembering the veterans of Operation Gothic Serpent, the heroes that paid the ultimate sacrifice, the wounded, and all their families. For those of you who are younger, have never heard of this conflict, allow me to explain. To those that were part of this mission, my apologies if I get any of this story wrong. I was not involved in this particular operation. At the time, I was stationed with 6th Air Cav at Fort Hood, Texas, and we had recently returned from Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. In December of 1992, U.S. President George H.W. Bush ordered the military to join the UN in a joint operation known as Operation Restore Hope, with the primary mission of restoring order in Somalia. The country had collapsed into civil war in 1991. In the following year, a severe famine introduced by fighting broke out. Over the next several months, the situation deteriorated. During the early months of 1993, all the parties involved in the civil war agreed to a disarmament. That conference was held in Ethiopia. Enhancement of the agreed upon terms, however, was not so easily achieved. One powerful faction, the Somalian National Alliance, aka the SNA, led by General Mohammed Farah Aidid, formed in the late 1992 and had become particularly anti-UN mission involvement in the country. Major disagreements between the UN and Somali National Alliance began soon after the establishment of the UN mission in March, centering on the perceived true nature of the operation's political mandate. By May of 1993, relations between the SNA and the UN would rapidly deteriorate. As the UN tried to bring food and medical aid into the country to help the people that were starving and dying of many diseases and different types of sicknesses, the Somali National Alliance was intercepting all the humanitarian goods. This started the formation of Operation Gothic Serpent, a military operation conducted in Mogadishu, Somalia, by an American force codenamed Task Force Ranger. The primary objective of the operation was to capture Mohammed Farah Aidid, leader of the Somali National Alliance, who was wanted by the UN for his many evil dealings in the way he treated the people, but also in response to his attacks against UN troops. The operation took place from August to October of 1993 and was led by U.S. Joint Special Operations Command. On October 3rd, 1993, the task force executed a mission to capture 2 of Aidid's lieutenants. The mission ultimately culminated in what became known as the Battle of Mogadishu. The battle was extremely bloody, and the task force inflicted significant casualties on Somali militia forces while suffering heavy losses themselves. Many other countries that were part of helping the U.S. troops under the UN, which aided in Task Force Rangers' execution, suffered losses as well. The intensity of the battle prompted the effective termination of the operation on 6 October of 93. This was followed by the withdrawal of Task Force Ranger later in October of 93, and then the complete exit of American troops in early 1994. The repercussions of this encounter substantially influenced American foreign policy, culminating in the decontinuation of the UN mission by March of 95. At the time, the Battle of Mogadishu was the most intense, bloodiest single firefight involving U.S. troops since the Vietnam War. Although there were many different battles during this time, resulting in many casualties on both sides, it was the Battle of Mogadishu that would become more known due to the Hollywood movie Black Hawk Down. On the afternoon of October 3rd, 1993, information was received that 2 lieutenants of Adid's clan were at the residence in the Black Sea neighborhood of Mogadishu. The task force sent 19 aircraft, 12 vehicles, and 160 men to capture them. The 2 Somalian lieutenants, alongside 22 others, were quickly captured and loaded on a convoy of ground vehicles. However, armed militiamen and civilians, some of them women and children, ascended on the target from all over the city and started attacking the American forces. Shortly before the mission was to be concluded, an MH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, codenamed Super 6-1, was shot down by NSA forces using a rocket-propelled grenade, RPG. Both pilots were killed on impact, but the crew survived the crash landing. Shortly afterwards, another Black Hawk helicopter, codenamed Super 6-4, was shot down by an RPG. No rescue team was immediately available, and the small surviving crew, including one of the pilots, Michael Durant, couldn't move. 2 Delta snipers, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart, provided cover for a helicopter hovering above and repeatedly volunteered to secure the crash site. After a 10th Mountain Relief Force by the Mogadishu airport was halted and turned back by the NSA ambush, Shugart and Gordon were finally granted permission to be inserted, and they would go on to become 2 great American heroes. They made their way to the crash site, quickly established a perimeter, and secured the surviving crew. The Black Hawk wreck came under heavy attack from the Somalia militia, despite attempts from the 160th helicopter overhead to hold back the crowd. After losing close air support to damage from an RPG, Master Sergeant Gordon and Staff Sergeant First Class Shugart and the surviving crew of Super 64 were all overrun and killed. Save for CW3 Durant, who was taken hostage. After their deaths, Shugart and Gordon would go on to be awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions, and their families received the medals. Meanwhile, the remaining Rangers and Delta operators fought their way to the crash site. Repeated attempts by the Somalians to overrun the position were beaten back with heavy small arms fire, accompanied by fierce close air support from helicopters. U.S. gunships constantly engaged hostile forces throughout the night, eventually expending nearly 80,000 rounds of ammunition. Consequently, the helicopters have been credited with saving U.S. forces from being overrun. A rescue convoy of nearly 70 vehicles long was organized with hundreds of UN forces. After hours of heavy combat with the Somalians, the rescue force broke through and extracted the forces that were being held down. The mission objective of capturing Adid associates was accomplished, but the battle turned out to be the most difficult close combat the U.S. troops had engaged in since the Vietnam War. In the end, 4 MH-60 Black Hawk helicopters would be shot down by SNA forces and 2 crashing into hostile territory. 18 Americans were killed and close to 100 wounded, with dozens of wounded UN troops as well. In total, the U.S. forces would suffer an estimated 70% casualty rate from the battle. 2 days after the battle's end, the Somali mortar strike on their compound killed 1 Delta Force operator and injured 12 to 13 members of Task Force Ranger. Somali casualties were estimated to be 314 to 812 wounded, including civilians, though figures bravely are varied. The American public was outraged at the loss sustained and were demanding President Clinton withdraw U.S. forces, and he did. It is said, and I agree, there is no warrior so noble as the liberator. And every member of this UN force and our American forces involved were noble liberators. Today, 31 years later, we remember their service and their sacrifice, and the sacrifice of their families. Many of you who have tuned into this show over the years have heard me mention this operation. And you've heard me mention many times, if you've never seen the movie Black Hawk Down, to please watch it. And especially one person in general, you've heard me mention, who's on record saying that the American and UN forces involved in this operation were the real terrorists during this mission. And that was Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who is the first and only member of Congress born in the exact place that this operation was conducted, Mogadishu, Somalia. She was born October 3rd of 1982. Today is her birthday. 1 year before this operation started, her father, Nur Omar Mohammed, was a colonel in the Somali army. Her mother, Fahuma Abaka Ajah Hassan, died when she was 2. She was raised by her father and her grandfather, who were Sunni Muslims. She and her family fled Somalia to escape the civil war and would spend 4 years in a refugee camp in Kenya near the Somali border. She and her family would assume asylum in the United States and arrive in New York in 1995 when she was 3 years old. Now, as an adult and as a member of our Congress, she has been very outspoken against our military, our veterans, especially those that served in Operation Gothic Serpent, our members of law enforcement, and Israel. In fact, she is officially barred from ever stepping foot in Israel for her hate-filled speeches against the Jewish people. She is on record condemning sanctions against the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the world, Iran. She refuses to call out those that attacked America on 9/11, referring to them only as some people who did something, and has made it known that she believes the #1 threat to the United States is not Middle Eastern terrorists or our open southern border with drugs flowing across to include sex trafficking of women and children by the cartels, but in her own words, the biggest threat that America faces is white men. For someone who her and her family were rescued by America and brought here to go on and live the American dream, she is the most ungrateful person that I've ever known on this planet, especially in America. Israel is being attacked by Hamas, who is being supplied weapons by Iran, who Ilhan Omar supports. Israel is being attacked by Hezbollah, who is being supplied weapons by Iran. Iran has said many times that as soon as they have the capability to use an ICBM to deliver a nuclear weapon, which could be any day now, they will wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Iran has also, over the years, supplied weapons to terrorist organizations in Iraq and Afghanistan to kill U.S. forces and coalition forces. And now Israel is being attacked by Iran itself with conventional missiles. Then yesterday, President Joe Biden said that he would not support an attack by Israel on Iranian nuclear sites in retaliation for Iran firing 181 missiles at Israel, and fears that lethal regional war is around the corner. Yesterday, a day after the massive attack, and after Israel Prime Minister vowed that Iran would pay for the attack, Biden briefly spoke to reporters before boarding Air Force One. He said all the leaders of the recent call, France, Canada, Japan, Britain, Italy, and Germany, agreed that Israel had the right to only proportionally respond to Iran's military strike. We'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all 7 of us, the G7 nations, agree they have a right to respond, but they should respond proportionally, he said. So, American patriots, I want you to think about this for a moment. With all the wars that America has been involved in, imagine another country or countries telling us what we can and cannot do in retaliation. What if, after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, Germany attacked Europe, or after Osama bin Laden ordered the 9/11 attack on our homeland? What if France, Canada, Japan, Britain, Italy, and Germany said, hey, you have the right to defend yourself, but it must be done proportionally? Only a weak-ass president would say okay to such a ridiculous statement. So when asked by reporters whether he would back Israel striking Iran's nuclear site, as it has long threatened, Biden told reporters the answer is no. Biden said more sanctions would be imposed on Iran and that he would speak with Netanyahu soon. You know, when he says sanctions, I wonder if that means he's not going to give Iran another $90 billion to continue to support terrorism activities. Iran's missile attack escalated tensions in the region, where the Biden administration has for months led negotiations on a ceasefire in a nearly year-old Israel-Hamas war. The recent assault on Israel follows the Biden administration souring its prospects of an end of the war between Israel and Hamas. We aren't any closer to that now than we have been in weeks ago, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby told reporters. He called the prospects of completing a deal daunting. No deal is imminent, one U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal. I'm not sure that it's ever going to get done. You may remember during Tuesday's vice presidential debate with Republican Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Walz said Democrat nominee Vice President Harris' steady leadership in the region is necessary. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions, to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of flickness around holding the coalition together, we will stay committed, he said. And as the vice president said today, we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences, he said. J.D. Vance voiced support for GOP nominee former President Trump, peace through strength policy towards Israel. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you need peace through strength. They need to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Vance said it is up to Israel now to choose how to respond, not Biden. Now, you ask about a preemptive strike, Margaret, the debate moderator. I want to answer the question, he said during the debate. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe. And we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. As Americans watch the world on fire, plus our own major issues here at home, all caused by the Biden-Harris administration, over 400 national security and foreign policy officials, ex-cabinet members, retired military officers, and Gold Star families endorsed Donald Trump today. In an open letter organized by former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien and former NSC Chief of Staff Alex Gray, the signatories condemned the repeated failures of the Biden-Harris administration's foreign policy and urged Americans to re-elect Trump. From a world at peace under President Trump, we're closer to a third world war than ever before under the Biden administration, the letter states. While multiple escalating wars around the world, an open border allows terrorists to flood into America's homeland, and actors like China operating unabated, U.S. national security has been profoundly damaged by the failing policies of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. The endorsement was signed by several prominent officials from the Trump administration, including Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former Attorney General Bill Barr, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and former 2024 Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, and many more. Even family members of the 13 American troops that were killed at the Abbey Gate at Kabul airport during the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan also signed the letter, which praised Trump's foreign policy record in contrast to Biden's controversial actions. When President Trump took office, the war in Afghanistan had dragged on for almost 16 years. By February 2020, a peace agreement had been reached, ensuring no American soldier was killed in combat until the end of the Trump administration. This agreement held strong because the Taliban understood President Trump's resolve and U.S. forces were prepared to ensure their compliance, the letter reads. The botched withdrawal from Afghanistan under the Biden-Harris administration in 2021 led to the unnecessary deaths of 13 brave American troops at the Abbey Gate and left untold billions of dollars of high-grade military equipment in the hands of the Taliban, making it the most well-armed terrorist organization in the world today. Additionally, 40 retired U.S. ambassadors, 75 retired senior military officials, and several hundred officials from previous Republican administrations signed the letter praising Trump's diplomatic efforts on ceasefire agreements between Turkey and Kurdish fighters in Syria and the Abraham Accords. The letter refers to Trump as a peacemaker. Securing peace is the greatest tradition of American foreign policy and the Judeo-Christian principles upon which our nation was founded. The letter continues before quoting from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be sons of God." Matthew 5:9. Such is the legacy of the Trump administration. Writing on X, O'Brien said he was honored to join his colleagues for the Trump administration in supporting a return to a peace through strength foreign policy under President Trump. Another signatory, Dr. Jerry Hendricks, former director of the Secretary of Navy's advisory panel, said it wasn't a hard decision to attach his name to the letter. Trump had one of the most successful foreign policy presidencies since the Cold War, Hendricks wrote on X, and said the Biden-Harris administration has been one foreign policy debacle after another. Then, over 200 retired U.S. military generals and admirals signed a letter on as well this week, endorsing former President Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. In a letter released on Monday by Flag Officers for America, more than 200 retired military leaders announced they were endorsing Trump for presidency, claiming he is a proven leader who will secure our border, repulse our adversaries, reinvigorate our economy, and keep America safe and strong. The retired military leaders described the upcoming November election as the most important election since the founding of America. The retired generals and admirals warned, "We are at a historic crossroads where we must either choose to stand for our Constitution as underlying traditional values which have made America great, or we will continue down the path the current administration's top leadership is taking into the deadly abyss of socialism and authoritarian culture Marxism. Where have you heard that before? In Monday's letter, the retired military leaders urged that the Democrat Party has divided Americas through a cultural war, while foreign enemies have promoted anti-Semitic and anti-American actions on college campuses all across this country. And you've all seen it play out on your television sets. The retired military leaders also warned that the United States could soon be drawn into a war across multiple theaters with peer and near-peer adversaries, and that we could lose because the Biden-Harris administration has depleted our military. And we're not getting young men and women to join anymore. The endorsement letter added, as the administration imposes divisive social engineering programs embodied in diversity, equity, and inclusion at the expense of warfighting readiness, China, Iran, Russia, North Korea, and global terrorists are rapidly expanding their capabilities and aggressiveness. This did not happen during Donald Trump's presidency. In Monday's letter, the retired military leaders listed multiple political policies and actions that they claimed have left the United States in a very bad situation, including the southern border crisis caused by open border policies, the poor conditions of the economy caused by inflation and other policies, and the physical and mental condition of the commander-in-chief himself, which they claim Harris deliberately concealed from the American people. The retired military leaders suggested that the current national security threat facing the United States can be reversed by new policies. As a result, the retired generals and admirals wrote, "We endorse Donald J. Trump for presidency based on his proven national security track record, his policies, coupled with his ability to implement them in the face of opposition. Worked before and it will work again." The retired generals and admirals concluded by asking America to consider whether America's national security is weaker or stronger than it was 4 years ago. The answer is clear, they wrote. We urge our fellow Americans to join us in supporting the election of Donald J. Trump for president. Our future is at stake. I've been preaching this for a long time now. I'm very, very happy tonight to see that there are other American patriots that served in our military and served in our government that understand and see the things that I've been reporting on and have gone out of their way to make it known to the American people what's at stake this November. I have told you that with every election, you hear that this is the most important election of our lifetime. This could be the end of our country, or it could be saved. Hell, I think I even said that during the last several elections. But for those of you that have been watching this program through the years, I've been very honest and upfront with you. From my own military experience, my own law enforcement experience, my own education, my world travels, those that I rely on for information at the Pentagon and the FBI and different law enforcement agencies and in the military itself, that we are at a point in our history where if we do not change course and do something with someone that's capable of standing up to bullies, that it will all be over with. Can you imagine another 4 years of what we've seen happen to this country and the world? I've told you, and it's fact, look at history, that every time America has a president with a backbone that's strong, that stands up to bullies in the world, bullies listen, and the world is more at peace and calm. And then when you get somebody in office that has no backbone and wants to make everything an even playing field and everybody gets a trophy, the world turns to chaos, as we're witnessing. We are on the brink of World War III with what we're doing with Russia and Ukraine, supplying Ukraine with the weapons they need to fight off the Russian invasion. Although I agree, Russia must be defeated. They cannot take over Ukraine. They won't stop there. We know what their final outcome is and what they would like to see as their final outcome. But we're pushing that dog into a corner and continuing to beat it until he may come out and say, I'm going to bite with everything I have, and I don't care the consequences, because Vladimir Putin has been humiliated on the battlefield by the little country of Ukraine because of us supplying Ukraine with the weapons they need to fight this battle. In doing so, the Biden-Harris administration is depleting our military stockpile of our weapons and the things that we need to conduct more operations as needed. Currently, right now, we have thousands of U.S. forces deployed across the globe, waiting. I'm not sure what for, because the Biden-Harris administration has made it pretty clear that they don't plan on getting involved with Iran and what they're doing to Israel, or with Hamas or Hezbollah and what they're doing to Israel. In fact, I think they just don't like the Jews, to be honest with you. It's sad what we're seeing happening across this globe. It's unacceptable what we're seeing happen with this administration. Now, yes, our U.S. Navy has used some of their missiles to help shoot down some of the Iranian missiles, some of the Hezbollah missiles, and that's a good thing. But those ships are coming under attack. It's a matter of time before more U.S. service members die in that conflict that's happening over there. Literally, it's on fire. It's a global catastrophe about to go down. It's a ticking time bomb, what's happening in the Middle East. And sadly, what are we doing? We continue to appease those that support the weapons of war for terrorist organizations instead of standing up. Will Donald Trump be the save-all? I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this much. I do know that what he did for 4 years was he kept America stronger, less people coming across our southern border, hardly no terrorism coming across our southern border like we have now. Our economy was better with the exception of what happened with COVID. Had that not happened, imagine what would have happened with America had it not been for COVID. Waltz made it pretty clear the other night during the debate how disgusted he was with Trump making a deal with North Korea. Trump got North Korea to stop their nuclear ambition and launching weapons to try and reach America. He stepped into North Korea, right there on the border, stepped across and shook that man's hand, stared him in the eyes and scared the living daylights out of him. And that's what we need, is somebody that has the strength and the courage to stand up to dictators. He got us out of the horrible nuclear deal that we had with Iran. And he sure as hell didn't send them $60 billion so they could continue to support terrorism across the world. He kept China in check. He kept Russia from invading Ukraine. And since Iran didn't have the money to supply Hamas and Hezbollah, guess what they weren't doing? Attacking Israel. And then one man and one woman come into office, and not only have they turned America into a cesspool, but the globe as well. And if that wasn't bad enough, we have a sitting member of Congress that is as anti as can be against American patriots and our military and our law enforcement. And she's got friends called the Squad that are the same way. And Democrats won't do anything about it because she's a Democrat. And Republicans don't seem to want to do anything about it because it's not politically correct, and they don't want to be called out as hating Muslims. Here's an example of Ilhan Omar.
In the early 1990s, the East African country of Somalia was rocked by civil war and subsequent famine. The U.S. sent troops there not to conquer land or steal resources, but purely to save lives. And we did that. We saved about 100,000 Somalis. That, by the way, was 1993, not 1992. I misremembered it. Seems like just yesterday. But Somali American Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is not grateful for what the U.S. did on behalf of the country she was born in. No, she thinks American troops were the bad guys in that conflict. A couple of years ago, she responded on Twitter to a user who was remembering the 19 American troops killed during the Battle of Mogadishu. She wrote this, quote, "In his selective memory, he forgets to also mention the thousands of Somalis killed by American forces that day, exclamation point. Hashtag not today, Satan." Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb fought that day in the Battle of Mogadishu. He's the author of the book Leadership in the Shadows, and we're happy to have him tonight. Thanks very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
When you read Ilhan Omar's remarks about the battle that you fought in, what's your response?
Well, normally it's humorous, but at this point, it's kind of disturbing because, I mean, first of all, she wasn't there. She'd already left the country. We were there, and I've never heard numbers quite that inflated. I mean, we wish we could have done that much damage, but that didn't happen as far as I know.
Well, I guess what's so striking is, and the U.S. has done things I disagree with around the world, but in this case, it seemed like the mission was purely altruistic. We were only there to help. We didn't take Somalia. I mean, did you steal gold or natural resources when you were there?
No, we didn't do that. We were trying to take out Adid because he was a clan leader that had, the Habagater clan had kind of taken over the town. They were taking the food, any of the aid that we were giving to Somalia, also weapons, and they're running drugs. Khat is a big drug over there. And he needed to be eliminated so that we could get peace back in that town. So we were actually there to help some of the lesser tribes or the lesser clans, such as her clan, which, you know, obviously they were already gone. But yeah, we were there to try to do the right thing. And you know, the other thing is, we didn't say, hey, let's pick out Somalia as a great place to go hang out. The president at the time, President Clinton, said, this is where we're going, this is what the mission is, and our commander said, roger that, we can do it. And we all had signed on the line. That's why we serve. And you can make a difference when you go to those countries.
Does it strike you as odd that, and I don't want to pick on Ilhan Omar, but she's a member of Congress, and so her statements get a lot of attention. Here's someone who was brought to the United States at public expense simply because we're a kind country that accepts a lot of refugees. And rather than being grateful for that, she spent the rest of her life attacking this country. Why?
Well, as they would say down here in Tennessee, bless her heart. I mean, we want her to understand that she's living large now because of her family being able to escape the atrocities of Mogadishu. And yeah, it's very disturbing. We watched our friends get drugged through the streets by the people that she says are her people. And we got to watch that on TV once we'd exfilled from the crash site that I was at, and we got back to our hangar. That's what we got to watch. So yeah, we take it personal when you attack us like that. Once again, it's not surprising to hear that. There's been kind of a long list of things she said that I don't know if she met him or not, but she continues to say them. So yeah, I feel bad for her.
Yeah, I do too. What about the families of the Americans who were killed there? I mean, what do you think they think of this?
I haven't talked to any of the families, but it doesn't take her saying something to remind them of what they deal with every day.
Right.
Whenever they go to a baseball game and they hear the national anthem, they look at the flag, that dad's not there with his kids.
Yeah.
That's a story that not just from Somalia, but all the other conflicts that I've been in and that I haven't been in, that's the story of the soldiers. So that's what we deal with on a daily basis. And really, we just want people to help us out when we get back, which is we need a mission. We need, guys to get help if they have drug or alcohol issues, which sometimes can be prevalent in the military if guys are suffering with injuries that they try to continue to fight with. So we try to get them the help that we can. That's what we want to do. And yeah, it's the soldier story from the last 10,000 years.
Kind of the last thing you need is a lecture from people like her. Sergeant, thank you very much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you again. God bless America.
To all those that are still with us today that served in Operation Gothic Serpent, thank you. Thank you for the sacrifices. Thank your families as well, because they served too. And to the families of those that did not come home, my heart hurts with you. It's still as painful today as it was when it happened. Like I said in the beginning, I wasn't there myself. I was at Fort Hood at the time and had recently come back from Desert Storm. But throughout my military career, some of the finest men and women that I ever had the honor of serving with were Army Rangers, Special Forces, Green Berets, Navy SEALs. That's what we did with our Chinook helicopter. I was a flight engineer on the Chinook, and I supported many, many operations supporting those brave men as we took them in to fight their battles. Some of the greatest, some of the best men and women that I am so proud and so honored to have served with. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I will continue to thank you for what you endured, and sadly what you're having to endure now by not just Ilhan Omar, but Rashid Tlaib, for instance, and AOC and Anita Presley, that look at us veterans as a threat, that look at white people as a threat. And they only do that and say that to shine the light away from the real threat. And we all know who that real threat is. I'd like you to also remember the horrible things that are happening right now up in North Carolina. After Hurricane Helene came ashore, it did some just horrendous, horrible things. there are over 200 dead and triple that are missing. Entire cities, towns are gone. Literally gone. Not there anymore. And those people that were there in North Carolina when this happened, the residents, the last thing on their mind when they went to bed that night was a hurricane hitting Florida. It wasn't going to hit them. They're up in North Carolina, for crying out loud. I remember talking about that hurricane before it came on board or came on land, and also sharing with you my experiences with Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Delta, and how Hurricane Laura, when it came ashore in Lake Charles as a Category 4, normally hurricanes start coming apart immediately. No, Hurricane Laura had only been downgraded to a Category 1 by the time it reached Shreveport, Louisiana, at the top of the state. And I warned that the same thing was projected to happen with this hurricane. And it was projected to still be a hurricane Category 1 by the time it reached Atlanta. And it did. And then the rains that it released and the tornadoes oversoaked everything there, causing massive mudslides and rivers to overflow and levees to break. The people in especially Western North Carolina are suffering very, very bad tonight. I've got friends there that I've yet to be able to communicate with because they have no way of communicating. I don't know if they're alive or dead. I have been able to reach our family members that live there, and I know that they're safe. But tonight, North Carolina is suffering really, really bad. And I do hope that the Biden-Harris administration figures out what's going on with their FEMA and gets that under control. The National Guards have activated not just in North Carolina, but Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia. National Guard units from all over the states are ascending on North Carolina to try and help. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have only activated 1,000 active duty service members. They claim that they're going to talk to FEMA in the coming days and maybe activate a few more. I'm not sure what that's about. But I do know that we need to send everything we have to North Carolina because those people are dying, suffering. Many of them have no water. They have no food. There's no way to get it there except by helicopter. And for crying out loud, there are helicopters on active duty military. They're all around North Carolina. They could be airdropping supplies into these areas where people can't be reached in any other way because the roads are gone. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless each and every one of you. And may we always remember those that paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, going all the way back to the very beginning of the United States of America. I'll be back next week on Tuesday. If anything breaks between now and then, it's of drastic importance to patriots. I'll either do a video about it or I will do a live program. But Other than that, I plan on enjoying my family and going out on our boat again this weekend with some friends of ours. There's going to be a Trump boat parade in our local area that we plan on attending and being a part of. That's happening across America in many rivers and lakes. And we're going to join that. So whatever you're doing this weekend, I hope you're safe. Take care of your loved ones. Take care of each other. God bless you all. And thank you for joining me tonight. And don't forget, please subscribe to the channel. In the description of this video and all my shows, all my videos, you can see the other place you can follow me on social media. Follow me there. I'll follow you back. That's how we do this. That's how we spread the word. Tell your friends and family about the show. And remember to tell them that Mr. Doug isn't politically correct. And sometimes a bad word or two slips out. So if they got little kids in the room, they might want to plug their ears or have them leave the room. But anyhow, take care, everyone. God bless you. And have a wonderful and safe weekend.